What is up, guys? It is the Bluebloods here coming at y'all with another Week 6 college football preview. And we have a huge ranked SEC West top 20 matchup this weekend in Oxford, Mississippi, Vaught Hemingway Stadium. And this is one of the matchups I think is really being overlooked. I know we got a top 5 matchup over in Iowa that's getting a lot of attention, the Red River shootout between Texas and Oklahoma, Georgia, Auburn, the Deep South's oldest rivalry. But you guys got to pay attention. 11 a.m. Central on ESPN. Ole Miss is a 6-point favorite, but this game, number 13 Arkansas traveling to number 17 Ole Miss, is going to be huge. And for me, this is really a contender pretender matchup. The winner takes a huge step forward in becoming a real contender in the SEC West, while the loser really falls back to the middle of the pack and really becomes an afterthought in that SEC West and really just overall SEC race. Both of these teams had tough matchups last week. Ole Miss having to go into Tuscaloosa, falling to Alabama, while Arkansas had to go into Athens. They ended up falling to Georgia. I don't think that says much about either team. I think both Alabama and Georgia right now are just light years ahead of any other team in the country right this second. And this really becomes a must-win game for these teams, especially when you're looking at the gauntlet that is the SEC this year. They're going to have to move forward, and at least winning this game will put them in a great position to go make a New Year's Six Bowl run, depending on if Georgia and Alabama both make the college football playoff, which I think a lot of people right now believe that could happen. Now, for storylines, the Razorbacks come into this game 4-1 and have exceeded any and all expectations this season, to say the least. They got 2 top 15 wins. They ran into the Bulldogs, but right now they're still one of the Cinderella stories of college football this year, and a win can bring them back up into the top 10 and really set themselves up for a real New Year's Six Bowl run, which I think would be way for I guess a way bigger deal than a lot of teams would believe, because I don't think many people thought Sam Pittman would have this team in the top 15 in year 2 after where Chad Morris left this program just a few short years ago. So their season's not over in the slightest. A win in Oxford this weekend would do so much for this Arkansas program. Now, the Rebels. They come into this matchup also at 4-1, and this game's not just important for the overall team, but it's so important for Matt Corral's Heisman campaign and just the overall Rebels season as a whole. Because a win here and Ole Miss finds themselves right back into that top 15, top 10 conversation, and they're looking for their first ranked win of the season. A lot of people have talked about the schedule thus far, that the one good team that they face, they lose to in Alabama. This is going to be a real litmus test to see where Lane Kiffin has this Ole Miss program. And also, it's an interesting matchup between two second-year coaches. A win for Arkansas would make Sam Pittman look like arguably the best hire of that cycle right now, saying, man, he's ahead of Eli Drinkowitz at Missouri. He's ahead of Mike Leach at Mississippi State. He's ahead of Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss. That hire of Sam Pittman looks better and better and better for Arkansas right now. And when you look at this series, the Razorbacks over series 37-28, and they won last year's matchup after Matt Corral threw 6 interceptions in Fayetteville last year, and the Razorbacks have won 5 of the last 7 matchups against the Rebels. So this has been a series shockingly dominated by Arkansas in recent memory. So Ole Miss also has a lot to prove this weekend in terms of pulling off the win in Oxford. They won the last matchup in Oxford, but historically Arkansas has been the one to win this series. So let's get into the keys of the game. For Arkansas, we'll start here. It's the rushing attack. Is it any question what the key is going to be for Arkansas? They struggled last week to run the ball against the Bulldogs. They're going to have a much more favorable matchup this weekend, though, against Ole Miss. And they're going to have to revert to that form and that explosiveness that we saw against Texas and Texas A&M if they're going to escape with the win this weekend. Now, the rushing attack was the focal point through the first 4 games, was the missing link, but they're still averaging over 225 yards per game, over 2 touchdowns per game on the ground thus far. It starts with Traylon Smith, over 300 yards rushing, 3 touchdowns, averaging about 5 yards per carry. he's going to have one of his better games this weekend. You saw what Brian Robinson was able to do last weekend against Ole Miss. Traylon Smith has to find some room and has to put on that similar type of performance. Now, Raheem Sanders, 185 over 5 yards per carry with the touchdown. He's also someone to watch out for. But I really like the kid Dominique Johnson for Arkansas this weekend. 157, averaging almost 7 yards per carry and 3 touchdowns. I think Johnson really should be someone to look out for. I think he's going to get a lot of chances this weekend. And for me, this three-headed monster at running back could prove to be a key for this Arkansas team against Ole Miss. And then let's get right to the X factor. Y'all know who it is. KJ Jefferson is easily the biggest X factor this weekend. Not only is he a large part of this attack on the ground, but he's done enough through the air to make this offense even more balanced and more dangerous. And this is going to be an important game for Jefferson to prove that he can do it against some of the top SEC talent. He did it against A&M before he went out with injury, but now can he take it on the road and do it against a very good Ole Miss team? Now, he's completed 59% of his passes. That has to improve a bit, but he's thrown for over 900 yards, over 10 yards of completion, 6 passing touchdowns, only 2 picks, over 230 yards on the ground, and 2 rushing touchdowns while averaging about 6 yards per carry. And one of the underrated aspects of Jefferson's game has been his elite deep ball. A 90.1 pro football focus grade this season. He's thrown for over 300 yards, 2 touchdowns on passes beyond 20 yards down the field. He's averaging 24 yards of completion deep down the field. The goal of this offense, it's been the goal all season for Kendall Briles, make you load the box, and then right when you load the box, they're going to throw it right over your head. They did it in the first half against A&M. They did it against Texas at times, and they do it just repeatedly. And that's something that was missing against Georgia, is they weren't able to make Georgia load the box, and Jefferson didn't have enough time to be effective through the air. That's something to watch out for. That's something that they should be able to run the ball against Ole Miss. Now, can Jefferson make the passes he needs to down the field against this Ole Miss secondary? The weapon that no one talks about in this Razorbacks offense is Treylon Burks at wide receiver. He's the only Arkansas wide receiver with over 10 catches right now, and by far the most explosive option on the outside of this offense. 22 catches, almost 400 yards receiving, 2 touchdowns, averaging over 17 yards per catch. The two aspects of Burke's game that has been explosive this year is a deep threat ability, 89.6 receiving grade on passes 20 plus yards down the field. And he's also been able to make plays underneath with short passes, 83.1 PFF grade. And he's averaging over 20 yards after catch when he catches passes behind the line of scrimmage. So he's able to make plays in space. He's able to get behind the defense. And so he's going to be someone to watch in this passing game for the Razorbacks this game. Now, moving to Ole Miss, the key for Ole Miss is not as obvious as many people think. It's a lazy analysis just to say Corral needs to go throw it around the yard. Because for me, the key is to stay balanced in their attack this weekend. Because yes, Corral is explosive. He's dangerous. He's one of the Heisman contenders. But for me, for him to be at his best, the run game has to be more consistent, which I think really was the key to Alabama stopping Ole Miss last week. The Ole Miss offense is averaging over 550 yards of total offense per game. They're averaging 300 through the air, but they're also averaging over 240 yards rushing on the ground. For this Lane Kiffin Ole Miss offense to be clicking at its highest level, both aspects, the run and the pass game, have to be at their best. So starting with Corral, he was the leader for the Heisman going into last weekend. He's still probably right there in the top 3, but he has to put a show on this weekend to keep his name in the running, and he has to avenge his 6 interception performance from last season, which cost Ole Miss a very crucial game. Right now, he's thrown for over 1,200 yards. He got 10 passing touchdowns, 6 rushing touchdowns, zero interceptions, and he's averaging 9.7 yards per pass. And I got even more stats for you guys. Listen, the reason the run game is so important is off of play action. Kyle is over 70% of his passes, 800 yards, 7 touchdowns, and 0 interceptions with an 89.8 Pro Football Focus passing grade. It shows why this rushing attack is such an important aspect of this Lane Kiffin offense and why Corral relies on the rushing attack more than people think. Setting the play action up for Corral is one of the most important aspects of this Ole Miss offense. And everyone just thinks he's back there in like a pro style offense, slinging the ball around. This run game plays such a big role in allowing him to be that dynamic passer that he is, and his legs give him a little bit of opportunity to go make some plays outside the pocket as well. The one thing about Corral is he has done an excellent job protecting the ball this season, and he deserves so much credit not to have an interception thus far. And if he can continue that this weekend, the Rebels are going to be tough to beat in Oxford this weekend for the Razorbacks. Now, the rushing attack has been explosive for them this season. I think it's the most underrated aspect of this team because the rushing attack is averaging over 5.5 yards per carry, and they're averaging over 3 touchdowns per game on the ground. It starts with Jerry and Ely, 206 yards and a touchdown. Henry Parrish, the leading rusher for the Rebels, 221, a touchdown, averaging over 6 yards per carry. Snoop Connor with 4 rushing touchdowns, 137 yards, and Corral, 161 and 6 touchdowns. Personally, I'll give y'all my opinion. I think Snoop Connor is the best running back on this team, but I think I like how they use more than one running back, keep a fresh body in at all time, and all three of those guys are averaging over 5 yards per carry. So they have some versatility in how they can attack you out of the backfield. Now, I think this Ole Miss offense should aim to keep this defense off balance and put pressure on Arkansas's linebackers and DBs to make plays in space against your athletes because that's where Ole Miss excels. And that's where last week you saw they really failed to take advantage of their playmakers in space last week against Alabama. Now, for the matchup to watch, it was really hard for me to pick. I'll be honest with you guys. I was thinking about when I first started, getting everything together. I thought I was going to go Ole Miss wide receivers versus the Razorback DBs because of Braylon Sanders, because of Jalen Catalon. But for me, looking at how I think this game's going to play out, I think the just slightly more important matchup is the Ole Miss offensive line against this Arkansas front seven, because not only will this matchup determine the success of Ole Miss's offense and how balanced they could be, it also is going to determine how much pressure is going to be on this Arkansas offense to go blow for Ole Miss, because if this turns into a shootout, Ole Miss is going to win this game because I trust them to win a shootout more than I do Arkansas. So this Ole Miss offensive line has played very well this year. They did lose the line of scrimmage battle against Alabama last week, but as you look at the season as from like a macro perspective, they've been able to be more physical and impose their will against some of the other teams that they played, and they have to repeat that this weekend against Arkansas. They've only allowed 5 sacks, 6 quarterback hits, 21 hurries, and 32 pressures on Corral for the season, and they've paved the way for one of the best rushing attacks in the SEC. Now, the other thing is Corral is a different quarterback under pressure. That's why I ended up going with this matchup, because Corral grades above a 90 in passing grade when kept clean, but his grade drops to below a 57 when he's under pressure. And for the Rebels to win this game, they have to have Corral being explosive and efficient to win this game. His completion percentage drops to 48% when under pressure, and he's only thrown for 240 yards and under 7 yards per attempt when under pressure. That is huge if the Razorbacks can get after Corral and force him into some uncomfortable situations in and outside the pocket. Now, the offensive line for the Rebels has been led by Jeremy James at OT. He's been the highest graded pass blocker on this team, but Ben Brown at guard has been the best overall lineman for the Rebels. And so if this unit can be consistent, if they can be physical and control the line of scrimmage, Ole Miss has a very, very good shot of getting out of Oxford with a win. Now, this Arkansas front seven has been great. Outside of last weekend, they've done a great job slowing down rushing attacks. They stopped Bijan Robinson. They stopped Isaiah Spiller for A&M, and they've been getting really good pressure on the quarterback. 12 sacks and over 50 pressures for the Razorbacks over the first 5 games of the season. And let's just be honest, the star of this front seven, Trey Williams, top graded pass rusher for the Razorbacks, 4 sacks, 13 pressures in only 5 games. And on top of that, I really like the three-headed monster they can rotate in at D tackle. Isaiah Nichols, John Ridgeway, and Markel Utze on the inside of that defensive line all have played huge roles in being run stoppers and getting some pressure on the quarterback. But for me, the front seven is anchored by, for in my opinion, guys, just in my opinion, I think this linebacking unit for Arkansas is one of the best in the country, and no one talks about it. Grant Morgan, Bumper Pool, Hayden Henry are all problems. All of them are top three for tackles this season. Over almost 150 tackles combined over the first 5 games, and Hayden Henry is leading the Razorbacks for tackles for loss this season. They're playmakers. They can get after the pass rusher. They're disciplined and they're experienced. This linebacking unit is going to be the key for Arkansas to escape Oxford with a win this weekend. The front seven for Arkansas has to find creative ways to get pressure on Corral, make him uncomfortable in the pocket, and limit explosive plays both on the ground and through the air. If you can make Ole Miss drive bit by bit, that's your best chance for success rather than letting them get large chunk plays and getting that momentum. So we're going to see a big test for not only Ole Miss's offense, but Arkansas's defense. Now, I was a little shocked to see the spread, and for me, it's probably because of the home field advantage. I would imagine why Ole Miss is the favorite right now, just because I feel like these teams are very evenly matched. You got a very explosive offense for Ole Miss against a very good defense for Arkansas, and on the flip side, you have a great running attack versus a defense that, yes, they give up a lot of yards, but they've done very well of keeping teams out of the end zone up until last week. But for me, I said it on every show I've done. I just think Arkansas this year is a more complete team right now than Ole Miss. I trust their defense to get a clutch stop more than I do Ole Miss. And I just feel like they're going to be able to replicate the running success that Alabama had on Ole Miss last week. And I really feel like, Barry Odom on the defense side of the ball has a number and has a scheme that gives Corral issues. I expect Corral to have his first turnover this weekend, and I expect Arkansas to escape Oxford with the win, 31-27 this weekend over the Rebels in Oxford. I know it's a low output for Ole Miss, but I just don't think they can keep up that high-scoring pace, and these teams always play each other close. Arkansas was one of the only defenses last year to give them problems. I think they're better this year, and I'm just a believer in the Razorbacks, when they're not playing Georgia in Athens. So I got the Razorbacks 31, the Rebels 27. Guys, if you're new, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and if you made it this far, comment your score predictions below. Love to hear y'all's analysis on the game, score predictions. Love interacting with y'all in the comments, and I love the support, man. So like the video, subscribe now, and also, just let me know what you think about the game overall. But I appreciate y'all's support, guys. We'll have another preview dropping this afternoon. It's our first one of the day. Go check out our Week 6 college football playlist to see our mailbag from Monday night, our previews from yesterday, and you can check it throughout the week for all our newest previews. We got 2 dropping today, 3 tomorrow, and 2 on Friday, so make sure to check that out. But guys, for right now, the Blue Bloods are out.